Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, as per your respective time zone. On behalf of entire managed services team, we'd like to welcome you all to 22B HR Help Desk in ORC advisory webinar session. This important session is to keep you fully synchronized with the new features and functionalities as a part of this quarter release which Oracle provides to us. My name is Hardik Patel, and I'm an operations manager here at Evosys Managed Services team. Today, I'm your host for this session, and I'm glad to introduce my colleague, Shevin Lobo, who is part of our vast HCM team at Evosys. So today, he will take us through all the HR Help Desk and ORC updates for 22B quarter release. Today's session is planned for around 45 minutes, and we'll also make sure that we leave some time to answer all your questions you may have. We have expert panelists with us from HCM team who can answer all your questions during the session, using which, you can use the question or chat panel, and they'll be happy to answer you during the session and at the end of the session as well. Before we move to today's agenda, let's quickly look at the important disclaimer. So we would like to convey you our approach towards Oracle updates in a very simpler method. We'll be taking you through vital analyses for the 22B updates done by our experts, which will help you incorporating new features and updates easily into your system. We'll also sync you on any known issues or bugs if there are any. We'll also talk about a little bit on next-gen managed services, which can help you accelerating your business with the expertise of Evosys. Then we'll go to the Q&A session and a closing note along with any questions you might have entered in the chat or question panel. We'll be taking that as well. And this is to give you mainly the glimpse on how we have crafted the structure of this session. So list of new features coming into 22B, and then detailing on features. So you get brief understanding on what all our new features about. And the next one is, as a business benefit, their important takeaway for you as decision maker. There are 4 components where we have done in-depth analysis of the features which we are going to present to you today. The first one is impact level analysis, which demonstrate the impact on the end user. If it's a low impact, then regression testing can be avoided. If it's a high impact, then we need to opt for regression testing. Second one, which is we all are aware that there are some features which are by default auto-enabled by Oracle, and there's some which we need to opt for. And the third one highlights the nature of the feature. There would be certain configuration which may be required, and some can be used without any changes. And the last one, which is a quick win. This term we use to simply convey that what is ready to use by investing minimum amount of time and what requires significant amount of time and efforts to make use of this feature. Before I hand it over to my colleague Shevin, we would like to know with a quick poll that which industry does your organization belongs to. This will help us creating more fruitful webinar content moving forward. Thank you so much. We'll be closing the poll in next 5 seconds, and then we'll begin today's session. With this, I'll be handing over to my colleague Shevin. Unmute yourself, and stage is all yours. Thank you.
Thanks, Hardik. Thanks for the lovely introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, with respect to your time zones. I'm Shevin, and I'll be walking you through the 22B updates for Oracle Recruiting Cloud and HR Help Desk. So we'll be starting the session with the analysis of the latest release. And here is the Evosys analysis of the latest release that we have for HR Help Desk and Oracle Recruiting Cloud. With this release, Oracle has identified 34 new features out of which 22 are in the default category. So we would require no to minimal configuration to have these features. We have 10 features in the quick wins. So for this feature, we would require minimal enablement. And of course, we have the rest category where we would have known issues or any features that are discontinued with this particular release. Evosys identifies all these features into 4 broad categories. The first one is quick wins default with no configuration. So as the name suggests, you do not require any configuration to have these features with us. The next category is quick wins default with configuration. So we would require some kind of configuration to be done to have these features enabled. The third category that we have is quick wins opt-ins. We would require some enablement to be done to have the feature. And lastly, the rest category. So we'll be starting with the first category, quick wins default with no configuration. The first feature that we have here is deactivate countries in geography hierarchy structure. So as we know, on the enterprise level, we do need to set up a geography hierarchy structure where we would use these particular countries in our Oracle Recruiting Cloud processes. With this feature, now we can inactivate some of the countries that we do not want to use in Oracle Recruiting Cloud throughout our implementation. And these would not be available in any of the work areas. For example, this would not be available in posting. We'll go on to the next features, and this is one of the great features that we have in this particular release, that is add comments when moving job applications. I'd like to explain this particular feature with an example. So let's say a candidate applies for a job and the hiring manager does a first review of the particular candidate, and the hiring manager wants to move this particular candidate to another state and phase. And from that state and phase, the recruiter will be carrying forward with the candidate selection process. So the hiring manager can now provide their comments, and these particular comments would be reflected to the recruiters, and the recruiters can take their actions accordingly. A great thing about this feature is that it does not require enablement or configuration, and it's default with the enhancement. The next feature that we have is career site customization enhancements. So let me just zoom in a bit here. So as we know, across the globe, we're now using the minimalistic career site. And the first page that the external candidate sees when they get into the external career site link is the particular search page. So we would see the search icon there, the search bar, and we have certain enhancement on this. So we have added few more elements. For example, we have headlines, we have paragraphs, we have images, videos available on this particular page, where it provides a great user experience for our candidates. Another great enhancement that has been included here is enhancement of the search bar. So I'd like to explain this with an example. Let's say we have find jobs as a section here. We have near location as another section, and we have the search button. So we can change the look and feel of this particular search bar in a way we want to provide the best user experience, and of course have a career site that suits our organization requirements. The next feature that we have is candidate labels in prospects and job applications. So in the early releases, we did have this feature of candidate labels introduced to us, where recruiters or any of the recruiting users could label their candidates. We have introduced this feature in the prospect section as well. So when a recruiter will go into the prospect sections, they will add certain prospects. They could also add the candidate labels. For example, we have IT experience. And when we will convert these particular candidates into job applications, they will be available there as well. The next feature that Oracle has introduced is display of answers in multiple choice questions in applications flow. So while a candidate is applying for a job, they definitely do have certain questions that they need to answer. And now we have two more enhancements in this particular work area. Let's say we have certain questions that require more than one answer. So in this case, we have two options. The first one is the candidate can answer it in the form of checkboxes. So we can have 3 to 4 or 5 as per our requirement amount of checkboxes for the candidates to check from. And the second one is through a list of values. So let's say we have a huge extensive list of locations from which the candidate needs to select something. So in that case, the candidates can select it from the list of value format. And these particular answers will also be rendered in list of values or checkbox format itself. The next feature that Oracle has introduced is multilingual support for candidate labels. This is a feature keeping in mind the global implementation that happens across. So as we know, in the earlier slides as well, we've seen the candidate labels that are available for use. So the Recruiters can essentially add candidate labels. They can also delete the candidate labels with this cross icon. And along with that, with this enhancement, they can also translate these particular candidate labels into the languages that they prefer. And this will reflect across their whole implementation that happens. The next feature that we have is candidate time zones in interview scheduling. So Oracle has again introduced this feature, keeping in mind the global implementation. I'd like to explain this with an example. So let's say we have a candidate from India and we have the interview panelist from Australia. In this case, it is difficult to find the exact time zone that the candidate is. So with this new enhancement, Oracle has made sure that the recruiters will be able to see the time zones of our candidates while they are scheduling interviews. Just a note here, the time zones for our external candidates would be from their application itself, whereas the internal candidates would have their time zones from preferences in employee self-service. The next feature that we have is updated interview calendar event contents. So when a recruiter will schedule an interview and they will send out the interview notifications to our candidates or to interviewers, we do receive a .ics file or on some occasions an Office 365 calendar attachments. So Oracle has now enhanced these particular files with the location fields. So we would now have the details of our locations. So when a recruiter schedules an interview, they do add a certain information about the location and the location details, which would be flowing into the .ics file. Along with that, we would also have the candidate's name in that particular .ics file. So the interview panelists are more aware and have the exact details of the interview location and candidate name as well. The next feature that Oracle has introduced is banners for job requisition approval. Previously, this particular banner was available in our offer management section. So when a recruiter or any of the recruiting users created an offer and they send it out for approval, they would be able to see the current approvers that are a part of the approval process and where exactly the approval lies. With this enhancement, Oracle has now introduced this particular banner in requisition management as well. So when a recruiter will create a requisition and they will fill in the details, or the hiring manager will send it out to a recruiter who will complete the requisition and send it out for approval, the recruiters will be able to see where exactly approval is lying and what is the next action plan with respect to the approval. So they would be able to do it with just see how it's going link. The next feature that we have is edit locations of a job requisition with job applications. In the early releases, when a job requisition was posted and we had applicants on them, we could not really edit the location information. So we could not edit the primary location or other locations that we use. But now with this enhancement, Oracle has made sure that this can be done. So when a job applications are in the requisition, the recruiters can go ahead and change the primary location or change the other locations, which will just help us increase the radius of hiring and attract more candidates across the globe. The next feature that we have is autocomplete rules in the when and why section for job offers. A bit of a background of what autocomplete rules are. Autocomplete rules are used to default or validate data in various fields. So we have this autocomplete rules in our job offer section as well. So in the when and why section, which is uh, the first section of our job offer management, we would set autocomplete rules based on the worker type. We have the start date, we have legal employer, we have the proposed action, that is probably add pending worker in case of external candidates, and maybe add assignment in case of internal candidates. I like to draw attention towards the impact analysis here. We have identified this as a high impact feature because we would definitely want you to go through one round of testing before we move on to the live instances. The next feature that we have is another feature into the offer management work area, which is comments and attachment about job offers. So essentially, we see in the earlier slide, we have the section for when and why. Along with that, we have sections like compensation, salary, and employment info, and so on and so forth. Along with these sections, we would have a section called comments and attachments, where let's say the recruiters would be able to add their offer comments. They would also be able to add certain internal documents, which would be available to the internal team or to the approvers. Just a quick note here, this particular comments and internal documents would not be available for our candidates. For that, we do have a separate section in the offer letter section in job offer management. The next feature that we have is use of terminate offer work relationship action code for job offers. This is an enhancement in the journeys and checklist section of Oracle Recruiting Cloud. So if we recall, when we're creating journeys, we create them based on certain action codes. For example, we have our move to HR. Now, along with that, we would have the terminate offer work relationship code, which would help us maybe exclude the candidates who have a terminated work relationship and provide a flexible way to create our journeys. The next feature that we have is create agents for an existing agency using ACM Design Data Loader. So ACM Data Loader, is a great enhancement, a great feature that we have from Oracle, which helps us load bulk data into the system. Now, using HCM Data Loader, we can make certain changes to our existing agencies in our system. For example, we can update our agents, we can activate or inactivate our agents, we can delete location or job family from an agent. So this is more into contextualizing our agents. And lastly, of course, we can soft delete our agents as well. The next feature that Oracle has introduced is additional candidate preferences in recruiting. So this is the first enhancement that we have in the recruiting real-time subject area of our OTBI. So OTBI is one of the great tools that we have for reporting and in our Fusion system. So we have now added few more fields such as preferred organization name, preferred job name. So these are fields from the job alert section in current jobs. And we also have favorite job requisition number and favorite job requisition title. These are fields that flow from the favorite job section of our current jobs. And these are pertaining to our internal candidates. The next feature that we have is additional offer fields in offer dimension. Again, another enhancement in the OTBI section of recruiting real-time subject area. We have added a lot of fields here. So for example, we have added bypass offer lifecycle indicator. We have the offer letter template name, offer letter template ID. So this will help us identify which exactly template was used for our candidates. We have offer indicator, parent offer ID, parent offer name. So these are pertaining to the early release feature that we have where we could merge our candidates even when they had a job or offer in hand. We have push processing status name, start date change indicator. We have offer created from a copy. So we could have this flag when an offer was created from a copy. And of course, we have object status, which we'll be talking about in the upcoming slides. The next feature that we have is multiple offer support in recruiting subject areas. So in the earlier slide, we did see about object status. So this particular feature talks about the object status field that we would have. So I'd like to explain this with an example. Let's say we have two candidates that we would merge after they have an offer. So in this case, one of the offers would become inactive and the other one would remain active. So with this object status field, we could filter out the active job offers and we could report just on them. So this enhancement, we can have better reports on the number of offers by removing duplicate offers from merged offer candidates. The next feature is again another enhancement and a great enhancement in the OTBI section for recruiting real-time data. So it is candidate profile information that has been added to the recruiting events subject areas. In the early releases, let's say we have certain talent profiles that the candidate fills in while applying for a job or while we have requested certain more information. What we needed to do was we needed to merge two subject areas. So we need to merge subject area that contains talent profiles, and we had to merge the subject area for recruiting real time or recruiting events real time. But with this enhancement, we have included all our talent profiles in the recruiting subject area themselves. So we can easily recruit, we can easily report on the data for certification, degree, previous employment, work requirements, or languages from one subject areas itself, and we do not need to merge two different subject areas. The next feature that we have is view and manage relationship between service requests. So this is a feature that Oracle has introduced in the HR Help Desk, and this is the first feature that we'll be looking into, the HR HD. So with this feature, we can view or manage relationships between service requests. So we can leverage on these relationships to make easy updates across our service requests. And of course, this particular relationship will help us make our service agents more efficient and also improve the resolution that we receive on any of the service requests that we raise. The next feature again is a part of HR Help Desk, which is import service categories using import management. So we can now import service categories using the import management tool. We can also export our service categories using the export management tool. And let's say we have done some extensions or we have added some custom fields in our service categories, we can import that as well using the standard import management tool. This brings us to the end of the first category, that is quick wins default with no configuration. And we would go on to the next category of features, which is quick wins default with configuration. So the feature that we have here is public skills content section, which I feel is one of the most important features that we have with respect to talent management and Oracle Recruiting Cloud. So I just like to give an example here. So when a recruiter gets into the hiring work area, they see certain sections like they would see our job requisitions, they would see candidate search. Now, along with that, we have also added, Oracle has added public skills content section. So with this, what happens is, let's say an external candidate apply for a job and they fill in certain talent profiles. So these particular talent profile information would be carried forward in our public skills content section, and the recruiter will have full visibility of these particular updates. Let's say we are moving these particular candidates to HR after we have, of course, done the offer management processes, and these particular candidates are now employees in our organization. And when they do certain updates to their skills or any other talent profiles, they would be updated in the public skills content section in the same hiring work area. So recruiter would have 360-degree view of all the updates that have been made in the public skills content section. We would go on to the next category of our features, which is quick wins opt-ins. The first feature that we have is enhanced job requisition security profile. I just like to zoom in a bit here. In the early releases, we could have a security for job requisitions based on job family. We could secure it based on job function. We could secure it based on location, organization, or recruiting type. With this feature, we can now have certain more enhancement in our job requisition security profile. So we could now secure it based on areas of responsibilities. We could also secure it based on hiring team member types. So if we have, let's say, recruiters, we could have a separate security profile for recruiters. We could have a separate security profile for collaborators or hiring managers. And along with that, we also have this small checkbox, which allows us to access our subordinates requisition. And let's say if this particular checkbox is unchecked, we would not be able to access the requisition that our subordinates raise. Again, I would like to draw attention to the impact analysis that we have. We have identified this as a high impact feature because we would definitely want you all to set up your requisition security profiles on test instance before we go on to the production instances. The next feature that we have is search for jobs using recruiting locations. So as we know, in the early releases, the candidates would be able to search for jobs using the worldwide geography. But with this enhancement, we can restrict them to searching for jobs based on our geography hierarchies. So let's say we have a geography hierarchy just for United States, and we have certain states there like California, and we have Daly City, and so on and so forth. The candidates would only be able to search for these particular locations and no other locations. So this helps us and lets candidates search for jobs only in locations where jobs can be potentially posted. The next feature that we have is prevent redrafting completed offers. So I'd like to explain this with an example. So let's say a candidate applies for a job and we have given them an offer and they have rejected the offer due to some contingencies, or they have also accepted the offer based on certain other conditions. So this allows the recruiters to redraft our offers. But with this feature, now we can limit the days to which the offers can be redrafted. Let's say we add days of 10. So once the candidate accepts or rejects the offer, it can only be redrafted to the next 10 days of extension. The next feature that we have again is with location search on our external career sites. So as we can see in the earlier slides, we did see that the candidates can apply for a job or search for a job based on worldwide geography. But with this, we can restrict the candidate search to recruiting locations only. So I just get in a bit here. The candidates now would be, instead of all locations, we would have recruiting locations in the dropdown, and the candidates would only be able to search for jobs in recruiting locations. Along with that, they would be able to search with the postal code, or they could search with my locations. Again, this helps the candidates to search for jobs where they are potentially posted, and not search for jobs where there might not be any requisitions. The next feature that we have is automated hiring team and agent notifications. So this is another enhancement that we have in the candidate selection process itself. So again, an example here, let's say the hiring manager is reviewing the candidates and they are moving the candidates to another state and phase. So in this case, we will have an automated hiring notification to our recruiters and to our agents, and also our collaborators, of course, to tell them what exactly was done here and what details they need to see for the next action plans. Again, the impact analysis here that we have done, and we have identified this as a high impact feature because it involves automation, it involves notifications, and we definitely want you all to test it once before we go on to our live instances. The next feature that we have is agency support for role category and username. I'd just like to draw attention here. In the early releases, all we had was we could hide candidate data from our agents, or we could allow them to see internal candidate data with this particular checkbox for allow internal candidate search. But now we can define our own user categories. So in the security console, we can define user categories. We could define a new one for our agents, and we could map a role which would automatically identify who the agents in the system are. So the best use case that we have here, let's say all the organization employees have a first name dot last name username. We could set up the usernames for our agents in the last name dot first name format, and this would maintain consistency across all the users in our organization and our agents. The next feature that we have is third-party links in candidate self-service pages. Again, I would like to explain this with an example. Let's say we are having background checks done for our candidates. So in this case, our background checks are triggered using a state and phase. So when this particular trigger happens, the candidates receive an email where they're redirected to the third-party vendor sites and they do their assessments and any other background checks that are necessary. With this feature, now we would have these links of background checks on our candidate self-service portals, that is our external career sites, where the candidates would have one destination location just to fill in all the assessments that they require to do or any other background checks assessments that are required. Again, we have identified this as a high impact level feature. And this is because it requires your third-party vendors to support this particular feature. So we definitely suggest you that we do it in the test instances first, and then we go on to our live instances. The next feature that we have, which is in the HR Help Desk category, that is send notifications to all members of a specified queue. So we essentially create queues to work with SRs efficiently. Queues are generally created with certain criteria. Let's say we are creating a queue based on location or certain other global fields that we have. With this particular feature, we can send automated notifications to all the queue members. So the queue members essentially would not require to manually check the queue to see items that they need to work on. They would receive it in the notification itself. The next feature that we have is make all profile option changes for inbound and outbound email in a single UI. In the early releases, if we had to make any changes to profile options, we would have to go to manage administrator profile options task, and we have to make the changes here. So this particular task would have all the profile options across modules and no restriction based on any modules here. So with this feature, now you will receive a single UI where all the email related profile options can be changed at one place itself, and we would not require any confusion in the manage administrator profile tasks. The next feature that we have is create relationships from action plan actions. So this is another feature with respect to relationships, but this is for action plan actions. Just a bit of background of what action plans are. Action plans are a set of steps that need to be performed by our service agents to essentially give a great resolution to the service request. We could now have relationships for these action plans, which would enhance the efficiency of our agents and, of course, enhance the resolutions that we receive for our service requests. The next feature that we have is create service requests with severity as null, and this is, I feel, a great enhancement with our HR Help Desk module. So let's say we have a certain request that we need to raise, and we just need to ask certain queries instead of actually raising a service request. In this case, we could keep the severity as null. We do not need to provide any P1, P2 priorities. We could just keep it as null, and we could raise the service request. And of course, the service agents could review these particular service requests. They could raise the severity if required. And this brings us to the end of the third category, and we would go on to the next category, that is the rest, where you have any known issues or any features that are going to be discontinued by Oracle. The first feature that we have here is job application computed fields. So I'd like to explain this with an example. So let's say we have date of birth as a field, we have pre-screening score as a field, but we want to combine these particular fields into one computed field. So computed field essentially are a combination of other filters that we would want to surface data that we require. So we'll be leveraging on fast formulas to create these particular fields, and we would have our computed fields available in the grid view, which is another enhancement that we had in the early releases, and we could surface the data that we essentially want to view. We have again identified this feature as high in impact because we would require certain testing with fast formulas before we move on to our live instances. The next update that we have is modern career site template phase out. So this is a very important update that we have, that starting from 22B, the modern career site template would be phasing out, and the modern template would be in maintenance mode from 22B through 23A, and post 23A, we would not have this particular template with us. It's an ongoing commitment, definitely from Oracle, that we would make our modern career sites more engaging, more modern to maintain the view and organization needs, but definitely we would require to start using the minimalistic career site if we haven't already. Again, this particular feature is high impact, which essentially requires you to do certain amount of testing to configure the whole minimalistic career site before we go on to our live instances. And that brings us to the end of all the four categories that we have. And we would go on to the next part of our session, which is next generation managed service. And essentially that is our innovation and innovative solutions that Evosys has provided for clients across the globe. So this is employment agreement e-sign via journeys. So we are leveraging journeys to get an employment e-sign. So the business need of this feature was that in Oracle Recruiting Cloud, the only place we could have any offers or employment agreements e-signed was in the offer management process. So after the offer management was done, after a candidate was a pending worker and let's say they have joined the organization, there's no provision for us to provide an offer to these particular candidates on an employment agreement. And essentially, these particular requirements come up from countries such as China and Korea, where it's a legal mandate to have an employment agreement e-signed in our on the day of joining for the employees. So we have leveraged upon the native e-signature feature that we have in journeys, and we have enhanced this particular feature that Oracle provides uh, into a solution which provides us an employment agreement. And this particular employment agreement can be viewed by candidates using the C document quick link there in our journeys. They could essentially sign the document, they could provide the email addresses, and once they click on done, this particular document would flow into the document records of the employees, where the HR can view it in the future, or the employees can refer to in the future as well. So we have covered all the features that we have along with the updates that we need to provide. And over to you, Hardik.
So thank you so much, Sherwin, for these wonderful insights. Before we quickly move to the Q&A, we would quickly like to note down your area of interest, whether it's technology innovation, managed services, value-based analytics, or cloud transformation. This will help us crafting better webinar content going forward. So your quick input on the screen would help us. So we'll be closing this poll now. And let's have a look if we have any questions around in the chat panel or question panel. As of now, we don't have any questions. If you do have at a later stage, you can reach out to the project managers or the dedicated team leaders, or you can pass the questions from the consultants as well. Or if you're not an Evosys customer, you can also write to us on business@evosysglobal.com. Before you leave us, we'd quickly like you to note down that we'll be sending you the HTML pager wherein you'll find a link. With that link, you can bookmark it for permanent use. You'll find all the webinar content, test scripts, the recording of this webinar, along with the PDF presentation. You'll find it everything on a single pager for the past webinars and the upcoming webinars as well. And just the last thing, we need quick help from you, telling us that how we did in today's session so that we can improve it in the future with a quick poll. So before you leave us, just quickly like you to note down that we'll be sending you the links to access this recording and all in next couple of days time, and wherein you'll find the presentation test scripts as well and the recording together. Everything will be accessible from a single page only. And on the next screen, that's the last one. We won't take much time of yours. We'll be closing the poll now. Thank you so much for everyone's input there. I'll be closing the poll now, and we'll just quickly show you what are the upcoming sessions. If you want to pass the message to your colleagues, and they can be a part of these sessions. We have the upcoming ones coming up: supply chain tonight, talent management, supply chain management, inventory and order management, benefits and compensation, PPM dedicated session this time. So they can be part of this, and it'll be great. So with this, we'd like to thank you everyone once again for preparing from an important schedule and be part of this webinar. Thank you once again. Thank you all.